So welcome everyone to my presentation on adventures in mentorship and belonging. And like I just mentioned, I'd love for this to be participatory. So I'm aiming for there to be some back and forth and some brainstorming and some ideas and, oh, this reminds me of that kind of a thing. So please feel free. I think we've got few enough people that as long as we're careful and respectful, we don't need to like raise hands. We can probably actually like just talk when there's a space to talk. And if that doesn't work, then, or if you're not comfortable, feel free to raise your hands as well. But my intention that I'm offering is to see if we can talk naturally. So yeah, so when I talk about belonging, I've had belonging in my mission statements for a while, and someone asked me, what does that mean to you? I don't really connect with that. What does that even mean? And so I kind of tried to break it down and see like what would be my formula for belonging, or what are the essential ingredients for me of belonging. And what I came up with was safety and significance and connection. And when I have those three things, it feels to me like I've got belonging. There's nothing necessarily missing there around belonging. So when I talk about, can we build belonging through mentorship? One way of looking at that, or one way of investigating that, would be, what are the ways that mentorship can build safety and significance and connection? And so I want to talk about what I'm calling like conventional mentoring, or how I usually hear mentoring talked about, and in some ways, sometimes I've experienced as something that's like, well, actually, let's put our money where our mouth is around being participatory. When you guys talk about mentoring, or when you guys hear about mentoring, what do you hear? What how does mentoring work in the worlds that you guys walk in, and how you hear about mentoring, before I talk about my own ideas?
From the perspective of the mentor or the mentee?
Both, either.
I think about it as the mentee growing in whatever way they want to grow. So kind of following the mentee's growth path.
I would speak about coaching and being a coachee. And I would say, as a coachee, I have killed off many a coach. So to me, the most important thing about mentorship is that the mentor has to truly be wanted and desired by the mentee. And it has to come from within that person. So that would be my key point.
I'll go ahead.
Thanks, Bob. The mentor will, instead of having the answers, will ask questions to draw them from the mentee, or to create the mentee's thought process in a way that leads them to the answers. That's what I have for now.
My sense of it is that the mentor has more trips around the metaphorical trips around the sun than the mentee, and that the mentee wants to be able to draw on that life experience. So it's not exactly coaching, because coaching to me is the mentor has the questions. But I think it's more that the mentee has the questions, and the mentor then draws the wisdom from the mentee with by whatever means necessary. Sometimes it'll be story, sometimes it'll be advice if asked for, but more often than not, it's going to be in the form of some sort of a koan that expresses, that requires that the mentee really lean into something other than his own mind, leans into his deeper capacity to listen.
I agree with what you're saying, Bob, in terms of usually it's the mentor has more experience in it. I would just add to that.
It's hard to hear you, by the way. You're very low.
I'm very low.
Now you're better.
Volume wise.
Okay. So I agree with what he says. I'd extend or add to that in terms of, I think of almost the reason for a mentor doing it. Hopefully the mentor remains open-minded, because there should be an exchange between the two. And I think of no one learns more than the teacher. And so it really helps the mentor to actually learn about it and learn from a fresher perspective what is about it. So I think both people grow from the exchange, but there is this kind of initial one person, the mentor has some expertise, maybe is a master in a sense, and the mentee is a apprentice. So that kind of starts out there, but both of them grow and learn from each other in the process. So there has to be, or there should be, trust between them going through it, and they both, ask questions more in terms of learning.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
So thank you guys. Some really good stuff there, right? Like, and it mostly matches with the notes that I've got around what I'm talking about is like conventional mentoring. So what I'm thinking of when I say conventional mentoring in this presentation is something that is focused on one direction, from the mentor to the mentee. And it's about imparting wisdom and advice and guiding the mentee along their path and giving them training and teaching. And so there's a giving from the mentor to the mentee. So let's talk a little bit about how this type of mentoring can produce the safety, the significance, the connection of belonging. Yeah, so talking about safety, what's the safety that might be produced in this kind of conventional form of mentoring? Any ideas, anyone? And this could be safety for the mentor, safety for the mentee, or any other safety that anyone thinks of.
I would say that the mentor, between the two, I think they have more responsibility. If they know more, in a sense that, no bad questions, that the mentee feels comfortable being vulnerable and exposing their lack of knowledge, and is not afraid to ask questions of the mentor, and the mentor never makes the mentee feel stupid for, like, in quotes, for asking a question. So they feel safe that they can ask any question. That'd be really important.
Yeah, I think that's great, right? Like the mentee gets a safe person that they can confide in and be vulnerable with. Yeah, it's safe for them to share their struggles, their limitations, their ignorance, all of that with. I think that's super important. Yeah.
I think the mentee. Go ahead.
How do we go? Yeah, Kent and then Bob.
Okay.
Okay, I think the mentor has authority. They're supposedly the expert or the experienced one. Therefore, they have power and they have influence. It's not a peer-to-peer mutuality. So there's a deep obligation on the part of the mentor to create a safe relationship where the mentor does not unduly influence the mentee, does not take advantage of them in any way. I'm done.
I like that.
Thanks.
I like that. And that emphasizes like this unidirectional emphasis of this type of mentoring, right? Where the mentor has the responsibility to create the safety for the mentee. That's great. Thank you.
I think that I'm going to agree with that with that over time, that power differential needs to balance out, because the job of the mentor is to bring the mentee's sense of self and self-worth, and significance is the word you used. I'm going to call that in Maslow's terms, self-esteem and self-actualization up. And in order to do that, the starting track of the mentor has to be one of non-judgmental, absolute no judgment, which does not mean not calling on bullshit. Okay. It means I have to, as a mentor, I must be willing to call the people I mentor or coach on bullshit, but I got to do it in a way that they can feel a mild embarrassment that they're willing to laugh at. Okay. So it has to be a gentle touch to that. And the mentor has to be able to listen very, very deeply. And then the third leg of that triangle for me is holding a space of compassionate curiosity, which frames the questions that I want to ask. What about my mentee am I curious about?
Yeah. One of the things that really strikes me about what you said towards the beginning around this mentoring relationship being oriented towards almost making the mentoring relationship obsolete, that the gap is going to close. Right. And for me, around safety, there's a safety through competence, and there's a safety through rank. And so this mentoring relationship is oriented towards raising the competence and the rank of the mentee, so that they're then safer, both in the world outside, and then also, right, the power imbalance will decrease as the gap decreases even inside the relationship.
Yeah, I think the mentor's job is to make himself obsolete.
Yeah, remove the dependence. I'm thinking on that. Maybe this is the extreme case, hopefully, but it seems like almost any relationship in that the mentor wants to create a space that's also safe for the mentor, in that establishing or enforcing their own boundaries. So, for example, if the mentee was really, bullshitting too much, feeling comfortable to call them on it and say, I'm not willing to do that. If you're going to continue to do it, this won't work, in a sense, but it's safe within here, and outside of that, it's no longer safe for me, and enforce that as well.
I like that. Yeah.
I'd like to step out of the box and say that I think the mentor has to totally believe in the mentee, and there has to be an element of love, which brings us into relatedness and belonging.
I like that.
I think
like that a lot,
going back to something you said earlier, Christopher, and maybe from the last talk, it's this notion of seeing. In fact, I see every face on this screen as my brother or my sister. I don't see them as I see. I don't. The only role I'll tend to recognize is from extreme elder. I'll think of them as grandfather or auntie or grandmother or so on. But my starting point is you're my brother or you're my sister, regardless of our age differential.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you.
I think there has to be a great deal of humility. Is that just because I'm the mentor does not mean that I'm all knowing or that I'm all perfect. I'm a mentor, and I have imperfections, and I want you to know those imperfections and be able to accept the fact that you're not going to be perfect in this either, and to not overlord because of the power differential or to defer to that. If I do know something, I want you to know that I know it. And if you want to learn it, that's great. And I have to accept you for where you are and not think that you have to accept everything I say.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, the humility
is. Yeah, humility is an essential element of self healthy self-esteem.
I like that. I like that a lot. So then what about with significance? How does this model of mentoring that we've been talking about, how can it build safety through building significance? Significance for the mentor, for the mentee, of mattering. Okay.
So
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think of it in building the significance. So if you have a mentee who is not very skilled in something and the mentor is helping them to develop those skills, to really shine a light on what they're already doing well, to show them the impact that they're already having, even though they might be early on and they haven't fully developed a skill. It's like, oh, here's what you're already doing well. Here's your strengths in this. And then helping them to develop, create a developmental path. So, and here's the places where you maybe could improve, and how can we improve on that? So there's this assumption that they're able to get better, and also showing them what they're already doing well.
I like that. It's not on my notes. I hadn't thought about that, but the piece around, yeah, them really understanding the competencies that they already have, and the impact that they're already having, right? How they're already mattering in the field that they're talking about or they're working with.
Yeah, because I think that they can have low confidence initially and feel like they have to get to a certain level before they have significance, but showing them that they already have significance now, and then also that developmental piece of how they can grow and have even more significance.
I like that. I like that a lot. Thank
And
you.
I was thinking about significance in a different way. Significance of mattering, if you're willing to give the time to your mentee and really give that time to them, then clearly you're showing that they matter.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, the main thing I was thinking about was exactly that, right? Is that there's an exchange of significance in both ways, right? That, oh, my mentor is someone who's important to me, that is guiding my life and is helping me. So they matter to me. And then my mentee, yeah, I would not be spending this time with them if they didn't matter to me. Yeah.
Here, I have
And
a question for
everybody
Let's go, Bob.
Everybody
and then Ken.
wants to make a difference.
Go ahead, Ken.
No, you first, Bob.
Okay. I'm looking at some of the younger faces on this screen, and I have a question for you. When somebody of my age, and I'll be 76 pretty soon, when you sit in circle with somebody my age, there's a part of me that wonders if I have any significance to you, or I'm just an old fart. And so that really is a question that both of us need to look at to establish what value each of us brings to this. So when I look at the younger faces, the value that you bring to me is the life energy that you're bringing. You're at a stage in your life where passion is powerful, and the sense of rightness and wrongness may be very strong. I'm at a stage where a lot of that has been very heavily sanded off by simply the energetic cost of dealing with too many battles. So this notion of significance is one that really does go both ways.
Thank you.
I'd
Yeah,
like to answer that question, if I may.
go for it.
I'd
Sage.
love to hear it.
So I grew up observing people a lot, and I would observe older people, and yeah, sometimes people do seem like old farts, but also like from what I learn about old people is that they've lived a lot more life than I have, and they have experiences that I haven't made yet. And what my intention was growing up was like, I don't want to end up like that guy or like that woman or that person, like all bitter, all like tired and no energy or whatever it is that like life takes from a person through life. And the significance of an elder or a person that has mentorship energy is that they've lived enough experience to give me the right shortcuts so I don't end up in a deteriorated state where I'm less powerful even in my old age. And so I've taken the advice of elders that have given me tools and viewpoints that actually help me to live my best self while I'm still young. So I don't have to go through all the hardship, all the difficulties that people go through just because they didn't have the guidance or mentorship.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think the elder gets out of that relationship with you?
They get maybe a sense of pride and joy that they have contributed in a positive way to our species, that we're going to continue on with less chafe and less resistance to the natural way.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's, go ahead, Lloyd.
I was just thinking, everything you said makes a lot of sense, but I'm also thinking it could be that the mentor is younger than the mentee, especially nowadays. It seems like as life gets longer and people want to learn, it's not like you learn when you're young, that you learn a lot of things. It could be the other way around. And I like what, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name, Seiji or
Seiji.
Seiji.
Just say the G.
Just say the G. G. So it's almost, who has more knowledge? It's and I think maybe it was Holly or someone who said that, it kind of is love, and it's this exchange, and it's a two-way street, and you have to be open to receiving it and giving it. And it can be in a lot of different forms. It tends to be more, one directional, but it just made me think that it could be the other direction.
Yeah. And I realized we skipped, Kent, you were going to say something, and then let's move to the next piece.
Well, when you talk about significance, what I think of is that everyone wants to make a difference. That's the one thing that will bring eros into any conversation. So this has to be a significant relationship. The mentor has to help the mentee see that the reason they're asking for help is because they want to make a bigger difference. They want to be more skilled. They want to develop themselves more fully and make a greater contribution. And then the mentor has as their bonus that they're contributing to the world, not by directly being on the playing field, but by coaching, advising, and helping someone else. So there's significance both ways. So that's what I was adding.
I like that. Thank you. And a lot of what you guys have been talking about, I think, segues really nicely into connection, right? In a really good, healthy, kind of conventional mentoring relationship, I think there's going to be connection. And I'm watching the time here, so I'm going to just zoom through this item so we can get to the next piece and actually talk about the next piece. So for me, what I've got in my notes is that hopefully in a healthy, conventional mentoring relationship, there's going to be gratitude, probably both ways, right? And from Bob and Seiji's conversation, one of the words that came to mind for me was legacy. That on the one hand, the mentee can be really grateful to be part of, to be benefiting from the mentor, and then on the other hand, the mentor can be really grateful for seeing the legacy carried on. That their impact is going to last longer than just themselves. And then the love, the affection, the mentor and mentee actually liking and enjoying each other, and caring about each other. Inspiration, right? That the mentor can have hope for the next generation, hope that what they've learned and what they've accomplished isn't going to just die with them, but is actually going to keep going. And for me, I think the mentee can often aspire, right? I was on a weekend training I think it was 2 weekends ago. And one of the leaders of the workshop, I think he was 77, and he was jumping up and down and high kicking and kicking his ankles higher than his head, and it was just amazing. And that's just one way that I think the older generation can inspire the people who might be in a mentee relationship with them to aspire to accomplish the kinds of things that they accomplished. And then appreciation, seeing and blessing each other's gold, including the difference that they're making. So with that, we kind of talked about how this kind of conventional mentoring can create belonging through safety and significance and connection. And I want to talk a little bit about what are the limitations of this kind of model of mentoring. Anything that anyone can think of?
The limitations of it, you said?
The limitations, yeah. Go ahead, Seiji.
Well, I mean, the mentee can only learn what the mentor has to offer. And sometimes the mentee will have questions that mentor may not be able to answer.
Yeah. One that comes up for me is that it can often be kind of awkward and formal, particularly if we're trying to initiate a mentor-mentee relationship, right? It can be awkward and informal, not something that we're used to or that we really have a script for either direction, right? Going to someone and saying, hey, would you mentor me? Or going to someone and saying, hey, I see something great in you, I'd like to mentor you. I don't see those conversations very often. I think that can be kind of awkward and difficult to, we don't really have scripts that everyone knows of, oh, this is how this works. And this is how we go through these steps of establishing this kind of a relationship. Yeah, Heather?
It's not, go ahead, Heather.
Oh, to add to that, I think that sometimes like in work relationships where you'll have a program where they try to match a mentor to a mentee, but then, so there's a system for that, but then they might not be a very good fit.
Yeah. And Bob?
Yeah, there's not really a structure where mentors can go and hang out and say, hey, mentor available. It's the mechanics of the establishing the connection that I think are a significant impediment.
Yeah. And Lloyd?
I think also on the limitations, it's in terms of creating the safe space, it's important, almost like a teacher student, you have boundaries, and that if there are certain feelings that develop, that you don't share them because they may not be returned. And a person, it's different than just out, completely out in the world kind of a thing, that you want to be very respectful of not endangering that safe space.
Great. Yeah. Another limitation that I see is that this kind of mentoring to me often seems like it's offline. That the mentor and the mentee aren't necessarily getting to see each other in play, so to speak. And that can be wonderful, right? In that we talked earlier about, like, if I'm devoting this time just to mentoring you, clearly you matter to me, and clearly you're getting focused attention. And at the same time, there's that piece of, like, we're not really getting to see as much of each other, and it's not as holistic as it might be. And it also takes extra time, right? It's a significant investment that might be either something that's a hesitation or just a limitation, right? If I'm doing mentorship in a way where I'm spending focused time with each of my mentees, then that's putting a pretty hard limit on the number of mentees that I can have, because I have only so many hours in a day or a week. So I think we've kind of discussed how this model of mentorship can be really wonderful and really create belonging. And something I've been thinking about is, is there another model that might be even better, or might be even more effective at creating belonging? And I've been really happy to hear some of the things that you guys have been saying really anticipate some of my thoughts on that I'm about to present. So I'm not sure exactly what name I would call this model. I'm running with relational mentoring right now, but I'm not married to that as the title. And kind of the difference in this model is the idea that both the mentor and the mentee are really actively and intentionally contributing to each other. And as I've thought about this more, someone mentioned a master and apprentice relationship. But I think there are other, that this model actually pops up a lot in history. The master and apprentice relationship where the master is teaching and even providing for the apprentice, right? The apprentice would oftentimes live with the master of a craft. And in exchange, the apprentice would do the grunt work, which was in turn benefiting the apprentice again, because they were learning through practice and rote and muscle memory how to do the basics of the craft before they moved on to the more advanced pieces. Two other historical examples might be the knight and the squire, where the squire is responsible to care for the horse and care for the armor and maintain the armor, and even carry the banner into battle. Whereas the knight was responsible to train, but not just to train, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but actually bring the squire along and have experiences with the knight. And then another historical example is from ancient Roman civilization, the idea of the patron and the client relationship, where the client was responsible to support the patron, particularly in like their political ambitions. One of the things that they would do is they would actually accompany their patron to the square where people would meet during the day. And so when the patron showed up, they would be surrounded by their clients, and they would there would even be a level of prestige there of how many clients do I have, that would just by showing up with them, it would be helping the patron, because people would be respecting them. Oh, they have got a lot of clients. They have power and they have influence and they have that kind of a thing. And then this was interesting to me as I was researching this a little bit. The client would actually participate in the family structure of the patron. And that would even be a responsibility, that some of the monetary responsibilities would be handled by the client or contributed to by the client. And then in exchange, the patron in ancient Roman society would support. So even before they would accompany them to the to the forum or to the square, the patrons or the patron would actually almost kind of hold court at their house, and the clients would come in. If they needed something, they would say, hey, this is something I need, this is something I need. So the arrangements would be made there even every morning before taking the trip to the forum or the square. And in the same way that the client would be supporting the patron in their political ambitions or what they were trying to do in their career, that would also be going the other way. The patron would be doing this for the client as well. So there's these historical examples. It seems to be a model that may or may not be hardwired, but certainly seems to work. That like a lot of these systems lasted for hundreds of years. And the idea is that we're focusing where the mentor and the mentee are both actively and intentionally contributing to each other. So I'm curious what that brings up for folks before I move on to looking at some examples and some how-tos and things like that. But I'm curious. Yeah, see, Lloyd, you raising your hand.
Well, I hear you. I didn't want to interrupt. I hear you, and this happens to be something of a pet peeve of mine. I think a lot of people, they may be very experienced, even skilled in something. I think my experience is a lot of people have knowledge in their head, but the ability to articulate it to someone else, the ability to delegate, I've seen really restricts people from scaling whatever their operation. And I mentioned it before, but I really believe strongly in the no one learns more than the teacher. And I've heard people say stuff like, oh, I've got a lot of, like you said, grunt work. I need to get an intern or something like that. And it's like, in my opinion, it's like scraping their nails on a chalkboard when I hear that, because it's like saying, I need a lackey, I need someone to do the grunt work, but their intent is just to hand the grunt work off to someone, as opposed to say, if someone, what I prefer to hear is someone saying, I want to understand this better, I want to learn how to delegate this, I should take on a mentee because that will help me grow. So it has this exchange, and the whole intention behind it is it's going to be what you were saying, the relationship. It's about a relationship. It's not so much a one direction of just handing someone the work you don't want to do. It's, I want to learn. The best way to do it is to take on a student.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot, right? What you're pointing to is like we'll call it the intern model is very extractive, right? There's not an intentional contribution to the intern, right? Which I think is even why we have our unpaid intern phenomenon, right? Is a really I think is poetically related to the intention of taking on an intern in the first place in the model that you're talking about. Certainly plenty of interns might be contributed to, might get a lot out of it, but what you're pointing to, I think, right, that particular extractive model of an intern, it's almost, perversely poetic in the way that we have so many unpaid interns, because they may not be getting paid in anything other than money is either, right? Yeah, I think that's great. Anyone else? Go ahead, Holly.
I would just say that, Lloyd, what you were just explaining is not a mentorship. I don't care what you call it. It's not a mentorship. It's getting somebody to do your grunt work.
Yeah. I think that's what
isn't a mentorship. Yeah.
And I didn't hear Lloyd use the term mentor, right? Like he talked about interns and didn't say anything about mentorship. And yet grunt work needs to be done. And is there a way that we can do grunt work in a way that's contributory and mutual, right? Like that actually is helpful to everyone involved.
Talked about humility, and it's like if the mentor considers themselves above the grunt work, that could be really, that would not create a safe space. But when you demonstrate that you're not above it and you do it with the mentee, then it creates more that relationship. I think you were talking about, Holly, that it's like, that's the more true mentorship.
So 3 kind of tools or dynamics that might be possible in what I'm calling a relational or a mutual mentoring relationship is one would be the mentor, other than just giving advice or meeting with the mentee one-on-one, might be using their resources to help the mentee. A lot of you found out about this conference because one of my mentors sent out an email on his email list, which is much bigger than my currently non-existent email list, for example. Right, so he has, in that sense, that an email list represents power. He has a lot more power than I do in this dynamic, and he's like, I believe in what you're doing. I like the impact you're having. I want more of that. I'm going to invest by using some of my power, my email list, to spread this around.
May I suggest an alternate word for you other than power?
Won't guarantee that I'll take it, but go ahead.
Reach.
Yeah, certainly reach. And if power is the ability to make a difference, then certainly more reach is more power. Yeah. Another thing is the mentee might be on the lookout for and bring useful gifts to help the mentor. So that same mentor who used his email list to help bring people to this summit, he happens to be really into dragons. And I ran across a book recently that he'd never heard of called The Celtic Dragon Myth. And I told him about it. And he's like, oh, that's amazing. I'm going to go get it. And I was a little disappointed because I was planning on getting it for him. But he said just knowing about it was enough of a gift. So there can be this mutual exchange where the mentee oftentimes is familiar with something or finds something that the mentor may not have been aware of, that the mentor could be really interested in. Another one of my mentors, who has deeply helped me, and they're actually he's actually the one that pushed me to create this summit in the first place. He was not familiar with the Enneagram, and he knew that I was into the Enneagram. And so we've spent multiple conversations with me teaching him the Enneagram, both the kind of the abstract concepts and then what's the specific practical application of this. So when there's something that I know that my mentor doesn't know and they're interested in it, I can help them. And the one thing that I really want to focus on, I'm noticing the time here, and I'm sticking to my commitment to end this at the top of the hour, so I'm going a little bit faster here, is the idea of going on adventures together. So yeah, so the idea of the mentor already being up to something and saying, hey, I need some people to help me with this. Who wants to come along? Or, hey, I really like what you've got. I want you to come help me with this. Or sometimes the mentee could actually initiate the relationship by saying, hey, I see you're going on this adventure. Is there any way I could help? Is there any way I could contribute to that? So I'm curious, yeah, let's take just a few minutes, one or two people. How does that land? Does that
Christopher,
bring
I
up
have to
anything?
check out. I have to check out. I have to go read some long emails from our mutual mentor before my daughter gets here. So
Okay.
been nice talking with you folks. Take care.
It was wonderful to have you, Bob.
Thanks,
Bob.
Christopher. Bye-bye.
Any thoughts on adventures and thinking about your lives, both your mentors and your mentees? Have you ever gone on an adventure with your mentor or mentee?
I think there's so many ways that you can create mutuality between two people.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who gets a grant and needs people to work in their lab, it offers something for the mentee and also helps the mentor. Would you like to help me with a project and be a co-author of a paper? Would
Yeah.
you like to co-teach a workshop and you'll be the assistant, but not the teacher?
Yeah.
So there are many wonderful opportunities to see mutuality rather than an authoritarian or a top-down relationship.
I really like that. Yeah. Some really good examples.
And you've been demonstrating all morning what I think is most significant. You can be a mentor by teaching and telling what you know, but that's not the way you've been doing this morning. You've been doing it by asking questions and engaging your learner. And that's another form of mutuality. And I appreciate that in you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it was.
So what I think about is the idea of being a shadow mentor and withholding information or being better than to show the other person, to build up your self-esteem, and in the process putting down the other person. I think that's something you have to be very concerned about, to know that as a mentor that you're accessible and you're vulnerable and you're not all-knowing. It becomes very, very important. I know I've wanted to be a mentor in some ways to my grandchildren. And one way I do that was modeling the behavior that I wanted them to be able to have adventure, to set up adventures for them, to go whitewater rafting with them, and for me to enjoy it, if not as much more than they do, even to show the passion of life, and so they understand that the passion can be, even if it is just, I'm 87, not 78 when I'm dyslexic. So to be able to show that there still can be passion in life, even when you get older, and to continually take care of yourself. And so all of them exercise.
Erwin, I think that you whitewater rafting at age 87 is incredibly badass.
Thank you.
To me, the going on adventures together kind of speaks to the heart of the issue. And, you know, I think Bob mentions closing of the gap, but to me, it points out how the beauty or the value, I should say, of multiple perspectives. And that two people or more can go on the same adventure, but they won't see the same thing. And through mutual experience and sharing of that, each person will get more usually out of that. So that's one of the greatest strengths of the whole experience to me.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. So in the same way we talked about kind of conventional mentoring through the lenses of safety and significance and connection, we can do that with this relational model, and particularly the adventure model as well, right? So thoughts on safety. Is there a way that kind of this relational model, and particularly going on adventures together, might create safety in a way that conventional model doesn't? And we're short on time, so we'll just have like one or two thoughts for each of these. But yeah, any thoughts on, like, is there a safety that's created in this model going on adventures together that's not created in the conventional model that we're talking about?
Just real quick, I think it builds better trust, which gives you safety.
You want to say anything more about? No.
Full
Okay.
sentence.
Cool.
If you
Thank
want
you.
to move fast.
You're respecting the time. I appreciate it. Anyone else? Thoughts on that?
Or showing what I can't do and what they can do, and to be able to let them know that there is a certain from the Lion King, the circle of life, and the inevitability of that. And so to enjoy what they can enjoy when they can enjoy it.
Yeah, and that hits on what I mentioned, I think, earlier about getting to see each other in play, right? That if I'm mentoring someone and it consists of me meeting with them and at a coffee shop or something like that, I can tell them whatever stories I want about myself and how great I might be. But there's that humility piece of if we define humility as being accurate about who I am and what I can do, that's going to be much more obvious and much easier to attain if my mentee is seeing me in play of what I can do and where I might have limitations that they might learn from.
Yeah, it makes me think of actions speak louder than words.
Yeah. So what about significance?
So the word that comes up to me, Christopher, I'm just sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
The word to be absolutely authentic.
Yeah.
That has become one of my highest values in life, is just to be who I am with the limitations and the goal that I have.
Yeah. Yeah. And then with significance in making a difference and mattering, what might be created here that isn't created in a conventional mentoring relationship? And Kent, you were already starting to talk about this a little bit earlier, I think. I was really excited about around like being able to participate on whether it's a grant project or it's being co-authoring a paper or co-teaching a class, that kind of a thing, right? Of what I was already up to, how I was already making a difference gets enhanced.
Right. Why don't you write the first draft and I'll critique it? Or why don't you take the lead for the next half hour?
Yeah.
And at any point you want me to step in, just look at me and I'll cover for you. You know, always being behind the mentee, and the mentee always knows they've got someone who has their back.
Yeah.
That's a real partnership rather than a teacher-student relationship.
Yeah, when I know I've got a safety net of someone who's a couple weight classes above me, say, then I can take a risk that I wouldn't take if I was by myself, and I can aim for something higher or bigger than I would if I was just by myself. I think that's great. Yeah. And by the same token, right, I'm thinking as a mentor, I can attempt things with a group of people that I can't attempt just by myself.
It's also important for a mentor to teach the mentee that it's perfectly okay to fail. Most of us play too small. It's good to have a big goal and only partially succeed, and let the student or the mentee know that that's a noble act. You don't always have to, if you're always succeeding, you're not playing big enough.
Yeah, I like that. That's really good. And then with connection, is there, I think someone's already said something, might have been Holly, about this, but what are ways that this kind of model of going on adventures together, working together, can create connection that the kind of conventional model might not?
Well, it's something that you kind of touched on earlier, is that like the mentor and mentee get to experience each other in real life situations, whatever the real life situation is, whether it's in a lab or you're actually going out for a field trip or going on a trip together, whatever it is. But the mentee gets to observe how the mentor behaves in the natural environment and gets to learn, okay, this is a way I can be, or maybe a way I cannot or shouldn't be, right? Because the mentor isn't the perfect person either.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so like I get to learn from my mentors how I want to be and how I don't want to be.
Yeah, and I get to know them as a more whole person, right? Was another piece that you're pointing out there. Then that certainly creates more connection. If one of the ways I think about people, and especially their personalities, is like being multifaceted. And if I'm going to go do something with someone, I'm going to experience more of their facets, more of the sides to this person, than if I'm just, okay, we're just doing mentoring right now in kind of an artificial exchange, and that's all that we do.
And I was going to feed off of what Seiji had to say, in that it's probably not the mentee's biggest expertise. So I'm in computers. We go roller skating. I suck. So I think that it's part of it's humility, which is the word that Irwin kept using, and authenticity, and all of that builds connection.
For me,
go ahead, Jen.
The idea of stepping into an adventure together, I mean, to me, an adventure has elements of the unknown, which is outside of a traditional mentor relationship. And so just by definition, both the mentor and the mentee will find themselves in circumstances that are unpredictable, and connection, you just have to build a connection in those moments or completely go your separate ways, right?
Yeah.
So it's the quality of stepping into an unknown area for both people that I think builds the connection.
Yeah, I like that a lot. There's a piece that I think you might be anticipating there, where it's a lot easier to go to a place of fun and play when I don't know what's going to happen, and that seems to me like it'd be an easier thing to do with an adventure than just okay, this next hour I have to be mentoring you, I have to be investing in you, I have to be, right, like, oh, we're going to go do this thing together, and it doesn't have to be necessarily as intense, but it might be more robust counterintuitively. Yeah. And then so just to sum up some of the things that I thought, and that I think have all been mentioned here, right, is that this might be easier to initiate. Hey, join me and help me on this adventure might be an easier thing to say than, hey, can I mentor you? And can I help you with your adventure might be an easier thing to say than, hey, could you be my mentor? This is more holistic. We're getting to know the whole person, both formally and informally. We get to experience each other in play. This can save time, and we can actually accomplish more doing this. So as we wrap this piece up, I want to invite you to consider, whom could you be a mentor for? And whom could you be a mentor of? And so questions with that would be like, hey, whose gold in your life do you really want to bless? And who's having an impact that you really want to invest in? Where's the potential that you see? Oh, I really want to make sure that potential gets realized. And then what adventure could you invite them to help you with, to come with you on an adventure? And by the same token, whose goal do you really want to learn from? Whose impact that they've already had really inspires you? And what adventure are they going on that you might offer to help with?